wasn't nice. Remind me next time, I will. I absolutely will. Yes.
It's all set up. We're ready to go.
Is it all set? Good. It didn't take very long. Good.
My notes are kind of really scribbly, so what happens?
Fine tune it.
Yeah.
But they're ready to input that.
If I was thinking I would screen print.
Do that after we close. We're good. Absolutely. Thank you.
Call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Welcome to tonight's meeting. If you have cell phones, please remember to silence them. Our first item on the agenda, as always, is citizen concerns. If there are any citizen concerns on an item that is not already on the agenda, please come forward.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I make one comment?
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to highlight, this is 100th anniversary. We're not only coming up upon the courthouse, but also the 34th ID, which is the infantry division, and encompasses Minnesota and Iowa. About 10,000 soldiers just spent 2 weeks up at Camp Ripley, and they had great distinction in the assault on Rome in World War II, and just wanted to highlight that. So I'm going to put this hat right here in honor of their sacrifice. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Since that was a citizen concern, we cannot entertain a motion to have Supervisor Ratty wear it for the rest of the meeting.
I wasn't offering, so just...
Okay. He would decline the nomination.
Yeah.
Item 2 is approval of the agenda for today.
Move approval.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 10 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate roll call vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the June 20th meeting. Item 4 is approval of the claims. Item 5 is approval of the appointment of Lincoln Ryan to the Veteran Affairs Commission. We thank him for his willingness to be reappointed. Item 6 from the Board Administration is approval of a notice of a property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 703 Ross Street, and setting that for Tuesday, July 11th at 4:35 p.m. Item 7 from the County Treasurer is approval of resolution naming depositories for the County Treasurer. You can see in your backup there was not much change there.
How are those selected, out of curiosity?
From my recollection, when he was present last year, it was based on simply spreading it out to the different depositories as feasible to benefit, so there was not an outsized benefit to any local bank. But that can be referred to County Treasurer. Item 8 from the County Sheriff is to receive a statement of unadjudicated condemnation funds now being held by the Woodbury County Sheriff's Office. Any questions on that item? Item 9 from Human Resources includes item A, approval of a memorandum of personnel transactions. Item B, approval of a retiree request for a spouse to remain on the county health insurance. That is Leslie Franco with the Siouxland District Health Department. And item C is to authorize the chairman to sign the authorization to initiate the hiring process for a deputy sheriff. Item 10 from Secondary Roads, County Engineer Mark Nera, is consideration to approve the underground utility permits for Northwest Iowa Power Cooperative and to direct the chair to sign the permits. That concludes the consent agenda.
I will move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Discussion? Mr. Taylor?
Just want to noted to the auditor, I'll abstain on item number 3, but vote affirmatively for the rest of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0 with an abstention on item 3 from Mr. Taylor, who was not present at the last meeting. We are now at a 4:35 p.m. set time. An action item number 11 from Board Administration. This is a public hearing and a sale of property parcel also known as 1915 Iowa Street. Before bids are received, the public hearing is now open for anyone who would wish to speak for or against the sale of this property.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We are now open for bids if anyone would like to approach the board with their name and address and their opening bid.
Rose Sanchez, and minimum bid of $295.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who else would like to bid on this property? Going once, going twice. I'd move to sell the property to Mr. Sanchez for $295.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Congratulations, sir. You bought a piece of property. Heather is right there to help you out with any questions. We are now at a 4:37 p.m. set time, item 11B. This is public hearing and sale of property parcel, also known as 1014 and 1014 and a half Ruston Street. The public hearing is now open. Before we receive bids, is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the sale of this property?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the hearing be closed.
Second by Taylor, second by Raddick. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. We are now open for bids on this property.
Jason Buckles, I put a minimum bid at $349.
What's your name, sir?
Jason Buckles.
Okay.
Minimum bid of $349. Is there anyone else who would like to bid?
Oh, that's a pretty good price for this. Maybe I should throw my name in that.
It's certainly be interesting. I don't know if you'd lose a vote if you win a bid against.
I guess I'd have to abstain if I win, right?
That would, yeah.
I'll let you have it this once.
Going once, going twice.
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that the property be sold to Mr. Buckholz for $349.
I'll second the motion by Mr. Taylor. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Item 12 is an information item from Human Resources at Gilliland. It's my pleasure to present a award certificate to Nicholas Neiman. There is a precedent the board has set since June 2015 to approve participation of our employees along with Sioux City in blood drives and to provide the same incentives they do, which is 4 hours of paid time off if you're kind enough to donate blood. And so this is awarded for the generous donation of 1 gallon to the LifeServe Blood Center and noted on this certificate. So, round of applause for Nicholas Neiman. Who will get this from the HR director.
How long does it take to give a gallon? I mean, I know it's not all at once. Okay.
Don't you
I
give
was
a
just
pint
curious.
each time?
What's that?
Don't you give a pint each time? So it's
not sure.
8 times?
Now, just to work for the county, you're not required to give blood,
but it does help, right?
Touche.
This is not an activity where speed is of the essence necessarily. Moving on to item 13, an action item from Board Administration Finance Director Dennis Butler. Item A is approval of appropriations resolution for FY18.
This resolution here is actually setting the department division's budget for every department, say the sheriff, auditor, whoever. Technically, we do this at the budget time when we do it by service area. To get to service areas, you have to have a department division budget to add together to get to public safety, social services, roads, etc. So in this resolution here is approving the budgets, or the budget for each department division. And I've gone through and listed them all by fund order, by department division order. And then I did add this year another piece to the back of it to show what the department division was, like general basic 1001 is uniform patrol under the sheriff. So it lists all the sheriff activities there by fund order. This is to help you understand what all these numbers in the front mean. In the past, we have not included this, but there was a question, what do these numbers mean? So you know which department division they are now. And it has a total budget of $52 million. Get the exact number here. $52,968,492. And that's what we actually certified to the state of Iowa back on March 29th, because we did have an extension.
Would you say this is a housekeeping transfer
Yes.
of funds issue?
Well, this is actually setting the budgets. The next one should be the transfers as housekeeping,
Okay.
yes. This one's actually the resolution saying to authorize the auditor that he can go ahead and pay payroll and APs.
So does this reflect that transfer to debt service for mental health too?
Yes, yes. Yes, we did include that to, cover the payments.
I'd move the appropriations resolution for FY 2018.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B includes 1 through 9. This is an action item to approve resolutions for interfund operating transfers for FY18.
Okay, we can go through each one individually, but these are actually transfers. They're moving money from one fund to the other that were approved during the budget cycle.
We'll need a motion on each one of them.
Yes. So if you want, we can go through these real quickly as you can pass each one as we go. The first one is the operating transfer from general supplemental fund to general basic, which covers all the fringe benefits paid for out of the general basic fund. Because we are at the cap and above the cap in general basic, we can levy these tax dollars out of general sup, then we transfer at the end of the year the total dollar amount. In this case, it's $6,243,935.
Move the transfer from the general supplemental fund to the general basic fund.
Yes.
I'll
That was
second
my
the motion by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 2.
Okay, the next one is a real basic transfer of tax dollars to the county library fund. For the county library, they have their own board. They set their budget. They set how much money they need from the county. All we levy on is the townships. The individual towns are notified and they levy in their budgets what they need to for the support of the county library. That amounts to $140,848, which is less than last year by about $20,000.
Move the transfer from rural basic services to the county library fund.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 3.
Okay, item 3 is a transfer from rural basic to secondary roads in an amount of $1,028,000. This suffices a minimum levy that is required so we don't lose the dollar per dollar funding.
I'll move the transfer.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 4.
This is a new transfer this year, probably a potentially one-time item. It's moving gaming revenues and general supplemental in an amount of $300,000 to reduce the tax asking for fiscal year 17-18.
Why was this one done?
This is new because we tried to hold the line on taxes, and we did move gaming revenue funds of $300,000 to general supplemental fund, reducing their tax levy.
I would move to approve it.
I'll second the motion by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 5.
Okay, the next four are all from local option sales tax to the rural basic fund. The first one is for $319,639. This is funding of the Economic and Community Development Department, which is a new department which we combined economic development and zoning into one department. Economic development was out general basic. We moved that all over to rural basic because potentially it's rural basic, functions there. So with a combination of two, it's $319,639. This does reflect the combination of the two secretaries into one, and potentially down the road it'll affect how we go the other direction with our directors.
Move the transfer from local option sales tax to rural basic.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Discussion.
This is just to transfer what was already passed, right?
Yes, it's actually budgeted rural basic. We're just funding instead of tax dollars, we're using local option sales tax to fund.
Okay.
We have done this in the past.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 6.
Okay, item 6 involves a transfer of $512,000 from the local option sales tax to rural basic fund. This is an attempt, and it is an actual property tax reduction on the rural basic, which is levied against the township's residents.
I would move to approve the transfer.
I'll second the motion by DeWitt. Discussion.
Does this have to do with the special bridge levy? Is that
Yes.
the,
The $512,000 broke down to $412,000 for the special bridge project and $100,000 for actual tax reduction on the secondary road levy.
one more question. When's the last time that you updated the board as to the balance of local option sales tax and gaming revenue?
That's probably the end of May. I will have a new one this next time,
Thank you.
next level, yeah.
Got it.
What's unobligated and what your obligations are for fiscal year 18.
And if it serves at the pleasure of the board chair, is that something that could be an information item upcoming?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And also, we'll have to look at the items that we have obligated this current year, the balance that are left in those. We either keep funding it or we defund and put it back in unallocated, but we'll go through those probably the second time. First, we'll give you a chance for information only, and then we'll come back the other way and look at what we had obligated.
And last thing, I don't mean to detract us from this, but if we could see the effect also with the Ag Expo as far as a projected timeline and kind of have that information, that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was there a motion on this? Discussion.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 7.
Item 7, one more time, is local option sales tax to the rural basic fund. This is for the full funding of our share of the soil conservation funding of $36,000.
I'll move it.
I'll second the motion by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 8.
The 8th one is conservation reserve fund to the debt service fund. This will be the 8th payment of a 10-year program where we did pave the road out at, I think, at the Nature Center. We agreed with the Conservation Board that we do it over a 10-year loan. This is reimbursing us, so we do not ask tax asking from this. It comes from the Conservation Reserve Fund.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Potabom, second by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 9.
Okay, the last one will be a sum of $1,300,000 to a special bridge project that goes from rural basic services to the secondary road special bridge project.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
That is
Thank you.
all the transfers. With just one more item, number 9 is information only. This will be last year we do the $1.3 million.
Yes.
So that's the 5th year we made it through it. And a lot of bridges got done that wouldn't have got done.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes item 13. We're on to item 14, an action item from Juvenile Detention, Diane McTier. This is approval of the 2017-18 detention meals contract with CBM Managed Food Service. Mrs. McTier.
Good afternoon. As I said last week, The food cost will be increased by 2.4% or 13 cents for a total of $5.51 per meal. This is the fourth year, and this next year, the contracts will be put out for bid again. See what we can find. I have 3 copies, Jeremy or Matthew, and I need to have them signed. And then I will send the contracts to CBM for signatures.
I'll move the approval of the contracts.
I'll second for discussion.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. How did the CPI compare to last year?
Went up. It was
Okay.
lower. I don't have the exact amount with me, but it did go up,
Wasn't last year 1.9, I believe? It was somewhere in that ballpark.
something like that.
You go by the Midwest
Right.
CPI, yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Do you know the last time that this was put out to bid? I understand that this is the fourth addendum. Was that, can I assume?
2013, 2014.
Okay,
That was the last time it went for bid, and then you have 4 years where you can just do the renewals.
okay. And do you remember, if you don't off the top of your head, that's fine, but do you remember how competitive it was the last time it was out for bid, or is that?
We had 2 bidders, and the one was the city foods from the convention center, and I don't remember the name of the service. They bid on it, then at the last minute, they dropped out, so it's been CBM since 2004.
But I think we will plan to go out for bid then this next year after this addendum to
Right.
see if there's still, I think that's a healthy practice and appreciated, so.
Probably will start the paperwork around December.
Okay.
That's usually what they want. That's what the state wants when we start doing the bidding process, because there's a lot of hoops we've got to jump through.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
How long did the addendum take from start to finish on your end?
I'm still not finished because now I send it to CBM. They send it back, and then I send all the paperwork into our representative. And hopefully she accepts it. And if she doesn't, then I have more paperwork. But I've got quite a few hours.
Okay. Well, we can relate to that, given the other contract. Thank you.
If you could just put them in our detention box when they're signed, and we can get them tomorrow.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes.
Oh, there has been, excuse me. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 15 is an action item from Building Services Director Kenny Schmitz. This is approval of a law enforcement center building HVAC front-end automation to HVAC computer system.
As you know, we've done several front-end automation systems in our buildings in an effort to tie in our HVAC systems and be able to control those systems from one computer that's located at the Building Services Eagles Building. This will be the last, what I consider major building or large building in the county to tie into that system. So we're asking for approval to get that one final building tied into the system.
Questions? Mr. Taylor?
What's your timeline look like as far as RCE and clear results on energy rebates and all of that? I know that's a protracted process, but.
It is. It's a drawn-out process. We've currently met with RCE and Clear Results. Clear Results is working on several different projects for us, this being one of those. I think RCE has provided or is providing all the information that Clear Results has been looking for. And Shane, you might be able to give us an update on that. I'm not positive.
And I guess my follow-on to that is, this is a $42,000 project. Do you have any ballpark? And I know we can't hold you to it, but of what you might realize as far as rebates?
So that, your rebates are gonna be not significant, in the less than probably $2,000.
Okay. Why is that?
Because you already have a DDC system in the building, and switching from one DDC system to another isn't great for showing energy savings. Where we're gonna get the energy savings will be in some different control strategy we can do. Currently, there's some areas that don't do night setbacks and things that don't, but the jail, quite frankly, you can't set back because it's a 24/7 operated side of the facility. So that skews a lot of your energy use numbers because you have the jail over there. So it's hard to get your dollars because what your dollars are is based on where we can save. So our areas that we can save is just in the actual courtroom areas, you know, basically your first floor down there. So that's tough to quantify. The process is also, as you well know, dealing with clear results is not always easy. They're trying to make it easy, but they wanted things like, give us the screenshots of your control system now so we can see, you know, what you're using for strategies now and how we can change. Or your system's antiquated, there is no screenshots of what you have now. So getting them all the information so that they can start the model to help us with the rebates has been kind of a lengthy process.
One of the interesting things is I got to meet Shane's boss last week, and he stopped down and had a visit with us, and this was one of the things that we were discussing. And he made some good sense when he said, don't let energy rebates, if you believe that they may be minimal, stop you or delay you too long from doing a project, because the energy savings that you're missing in the meantime may be exceeded by anything you might ever receive in a rebate.
We did a project with one of our clients in Des Moines, and it ended up being about a 5-month process to get the rebates all approved. The client got back $6,000, but they missed that whole time that they could have been saving significant energy dollars that were actually greater than the rebate by if they would have just went ahead and implemented it. So that's some things we're looking at as well. Okay.
Thank you.
How about how long on a payback on about 40,000 then?
That's not something I've run figures on.
The payback really is, unfortunately, probably over 10 years. Until we get all the quantifications of what our rebates are and what our strategies are going to save us. The big goal of this is the systems we have right now are outdated. They're not doing a good job, and they're not able to be managed by building services. So Kenny's trying to become proactive and be able to schedule things that you can't schedule now and do things. So until we get a really good handle on that it's hard to quantify that. But the controls is a hard one for a quick payback. Yes.
Would it be fair to say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because I know we've gone back and forth on this, that it's not only the energy efficiency, but some of the evenness of the comfort and climate that could help to be achieved, maybe not all the way solved, but I mean, we heard that from meeting with the union and the jailers last year. Would this help to solve some of those issues or be a bridge there?
It does, and it also helps create a system as you're doing projects in the jail. You're not trying to tie in some old antiquated system and have, right now in this courthouse, you have 5 different control systems that are running. It's part of what we're working to fix rather than, because then you're over at this computer, you're over at this computer, you're getting it all centrally tied into one thing. You can do a much better job of controlling it rather than one courtroom's getting an outside air temperature fed from the north side, one's getting fed from the south side because everybody's putting their own system in. We're trying to get it unified and county-wide. Okay.
Any other questions?
I'd move to approve the resource consultant engineer's quote in the amount of $9,500.
Second?
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also move to approve the star control quote in the amount of $32,328.
Second?
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 16 is an action item, two of them from Secondary Roads, Assistant County Engineer Ben Kusler. First is approval of plans for project number, I'll let you go ahead.
LC 07, parent 7-73-97. This is the drop inlet on being extended existing box on D54. It was also noted that this is a grant we're getting to do by about 50% of the funding on this from Hungry Canyons.
The way he said it just rolled off the tongue there.
And we appreciate the funding from Hungry Canyons. It's been
Yeah,
a
this
net
originally
benefit.
had an earmark for it too, but earmarks went away and the funding went away. We could have had 100% paid for out of the federal government. 50% is pretty good. We'll take it.
I'll move to approve the plans.
Second.
Second by Taylor. Discussion.
How did they not get it done with the earmark?
So long story short, the funding had a sunset, and we were not notified of that sunset date. And actually, we asked for an extension 4 days after the sunset date, and they did not see that that was going to be pertinent. They wanted to take the money back to Washington in this case.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Next item.
This is project number LB, parentheses Q10-73-97. This is replacing a substandard bridge with a box culvert with a flume, and this also is funded through Hungry Canyons at about 40%.
I move it.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Moving along to item 17, action item from County Sheriff Dave Drew, who is not present today. So Major Wick will present grant application for the 2017-18 U.S. Department of Justice COPS hiring program.
Todd Wick, Sheriff's Office. This is the same grant that we applied for last year, and we weren't awarded the grant, so we're trying it again.
This is a prerequisite to asking for it from the board, is that?
I'm requesting permission to apply. The application's got to be turned in by July 10th.
Okay.
The award will probably come sometime in September or October, if I remember from last year.
Was it the same time of year last year?
Yes.
I didn't read over all the details of the application, but was it proofread quite well to make sure everything's?
Yeah, it's a 75-25 grant. Federal government picks up 75% of the cost of the deputies' wages and benefits for 3 years. We pick up 25, and then the feds go up to 125 max. So you can see that our share of it would be about $109,000 over 3 years.
I'll go ahead and move the grant application.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Discussion. Eventually, this would become a budget process discussion for approval.
Okay.
Correct? Because
Yes, if we were awarded the grant, then I'd come back and request permission to hire.
further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B is approval of the CBM contract. First, I'd like to thank County Attorney P.J. Jennings for working through some of the communication on this. We've been doing our best as a county to follow up on, I think, some lackluster communication. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. P.J. Jennings, County Attorney's Office. I also have to include Abigail Sills in this discussion as well. She was instrumental in helping me understand this contract language and working the day-to-day pieces of it to get it done. As well as Kenny, and then the Sheriff's Department also played their part in it. So we didn't really have a lot to get done. There were some significant pieces, but we didn't have a lot. Most of it was done by the other parties already. You have before you, I believe, a copy of that contract. It's a 10-year contract. We made sure that there was a language in there that didn't bind future boards, so it's subject to, the appropriation of necessary funds for this contract to continue going. It talks about the purchase of equipment, because again, we're moving into a new area to complete these mills. It talks about prices per day, how many mills, that kind of thing. And then it's also subject to the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, as far as increases. And we've added a minimum of 2%. And I don't think that was included in the previous ones. There were maximums, but they wanted the minimum in there. They actually had it higher, and we were able to negotiate it lower. In discussions with, I think, Dennis we spoke with, the last 5 years averaged right around 1.6% increase. So we're not way out of the ballpark with that. And we don't see the CPI increasing that much anyway. So we're probably looking at the 2% per year increase over the life of this contract. But there is some language in there that allows both parties to relook at this after every year, to continue it. They have a little bit more leverage because of the property that they're agreeing to purchase on our behalf. We will own that property after the end of the 10-year period, but prior to that, they have ownership in it, and so they have a little bit more rights, which we allowed based on this contract, which was reasonable. We felt it was reasonable. So what we're asking you to do is to sign off on that. Both the chairman the board will have to approve it first, but the chairman will have to sign off on it, as well as a representative from the Sheriff's Department. Either one of these majors can sign off on that as well. And then I'm assuming Pat's going to witness the signatures of that agreement. So.
Most importantly, CBM will have to sign it.
Yeah. They've assured me that they're going to do that this time, and because of the matter, normally we will have them sign it first, and then we would have it signed second. But because we were trying to get this in prior to the close of the fiscal year, before the beginning of the next fiscal year, we needed to do it this way. But they've assured me they're going to go through it. It's their language. They prepared it. We just made it sure that it fit our needs.
Were any questions answered since it was sent back to you?
Yes. The only one final question that we had that Kenny brought up was that there talks about the county is responsible for capital equipment, and there wasn't a definition of capital equipment, but their response to me posing that question to them was basically what you already have. So there's nothing new that definition applies to.
That's good. Taylor?
I just want to express my appreciation, because between optimizing the LEC, closing Prairie Hills, standing up a training site, and moving the kitchen, all of this is a great relief to someday seeing this. It's become like the new Highway 20. So when it comes to fruition, thank you for all your work. Appreciate it.
It's a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve the contract?
I'd move to approve the CBM contract, authorize the chairman to sign, as well as the sheriff's office.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We're now on to item 18, which is an action item from myself. State preemption regarding Woodbury County weapons ban. I would like to ask for consensus from the board members to abide by some ground rules to avoid potential disorder or back and forth arguments or interruptions, given the potential of this item to derail. I'd like to suggest that after my introductory comments, the board would offer theirs. At that time, speakers will be invited and recognized by the chair in accordance with our bylaws. Our existing 3-minute rule may be enforced to allow everyone a chance to speak. In the past, we've had people come up and want to come up again, and someone else has not had a chance to speak, unless being questioned by a board member. If board members have questions, I'd prefer they be written down and asked of the speaker when the speaker is finished. Please, no interruptions. And then concluding that, I will have a motion or entertain motions from the board with open discussion as speakers are recognized by the chair. Mr. Jennings, I'd like to make some introductory remarks, if you wouldn't mind. The Board of Supervisors was led to believe for several weeks that an Attorney General's clarification of House File 517 regarding state preemption of public areas of county courthouses was formally requested and forthcoming. I'm not sure exactly where the communication breakdown was, but the board noted an impending AG's ruling verified as correct by County Attorney Jennings during the May 23rd meeting. This understanding was later retracted by the county attorney at a recent board meeting. I don't fault personally the county attorney, of course, but it was initially confusing. So I phoned the Iowa State Association of Counties General Counsel June 19th to inquire if they were aware of an impending AG opinion. I was initially told yes, and that an answer was expected by the end of the week. I was called back minutes later to be told actually no, nothing has been requested. Upon being confused again, I emailed the county attorney asking that their office formally request that AG opinion. Understanding a request may decline due to fear of contradicting the supervisory order from the Iowa Supreme Court Chief Justice. Understanding an answer may come back later, I think it's wise, at least in good faith, for our county to show that we are seeking clarity. I would say further, as in the executive summary, a couple things I want to emphasize. Counties are a political subdivision of the state. I believe this board's direct decision of which direction to take should not be based on how anyone feels about the law or even about weapons, but answer the question, are we following the rule of law as of July 1st? And then just to emphasize that this debate encompasses a political battle, perhaps if it could be termed that way, between the legislature and the judiciary, not between the local bodies, except that we must choose to act as a political subdivision of the state. 3 background attachments are included. The Woodbury County Courthouse Safety and Security Policy. This was passed by board resolution August 26th, 2014. Secondly, House File 517, Division 7, which prohibits subdivisions such as counties from firstly enacting an ordinance regulating ownership, possession, et cetera, of firearms, but also opens local jurisdictions up for declaratory and injunctive relief for damages if they do so much as make a motion. It doesn't have to be a resolution or anything more formal than that. Due to the timing of the supervisory order, it is easy to confuse that issue with an analysis of the law effective July 1. Obviously, the order coming out July 19th gave this county, counties across the state, less than a week to react as far as having something on the agenda before the law was effective. I don't want it to be missed that the county has not drug its feet in any way because we were waiting in good faith on further clarity. But with a deadline approaching, we've been asked, certainly by the Security Committee, certainly by other office holders, to make a decision as the Board of Supervisors. Extensive conversations with our county attorney convinces me that separating these 2 issues is necessary, the supervisory order and House File 517, and of the following. Regarding the supervisory order by Chief Justice Mark Cady, extending the order beyond courtrooms to, quote, court-controlled spaces and public areas of the courthouses and other justice centers occupied by the court system, unquote. And this is important. If intended to encompass the entire Woodbury County Courthouse, that's certainly the impression I'm getting from news reporting and the like, is a change in the reach claimed by the judicial branch, and of course an unfunded one. Regardless of the ends ultimately chosen by this board, this particular order is a means without authority based on separation of powers. It is a judicial overreach into spaces governed and allocated by the Board of Supervisors. It relies on contempt of court for enforcement rather than enforcement of law. However, it certainly offers insight into how the court may be predisposed to rule in litigation. And I want to stress on that point that regarding courthouse security, I do believe we should have courthouse security. But I don't think it matters how I or other board members necessarily feel about the issue. We want our enforcement of that security to be based on law, and we want to show respect to the law-abiding citizen. Law should be the preeminent issue here. Those in favor of the order as a means, or as I should say, a reaction to the state law, I noticed how to have a hard time uttering the word law as it relates to what's effective July 1, and that serves, unfortunately, to diminish the rule of law. For instance, a recent piece in the Sioux City Journal from their editorial board states, one provision within a package of gun-related proposals passed by the Iowa House and Senate and signed by former Governor Terry Branstad earlier this year threatened to undo positive security steps taken for courthouses here and elsewhere in Iowa. My point is that when we call something a provision, when we call something a package of proposals, we forget that it's law because we didn't mention that it's the law. Financial impact in the agenda form is not so much a worry anymore after the bill was amended so that costs would be basically attorney fees or outside attorney fees if necessary. What's, I believe, certain is that a county somewhere, certainly a county of Woodbury County stature, is in imminent danger of undergoing a lawsuit because of our existing prohibition of firearms. In a Washington Post article from April 18, a quote, Tom Ferguson, Executive Director of the Iowa County Attorneys Association, said because the bill does not exempt city halls or courthouses, local jurisdictions would face a constant threat of lawsuit and damages. Perhaps not so much the monetary damages at this point, but the threat of, the imminent threat of this lawsuit is, I believe, a sure thing. In regards to the standing or the potential, the bar set for allowing someone claiming to be adversely affected to, quote, file suit in an appropriate court for declaratory and injunctive relief for damages, unquote, not only in court, includes ordinances, measures, enactment, rule, resolution, policy, but includes something as basic as a motion. If the board takes no action today, in my opinion, that's an enactment of our existing firearms ban, which is the same as a positive motion to carry on regardless of what the law says. So Woodbury County has certainly met the standard. Financially and politically, I question the wait until we get sued route as being the best strategy or best use of tax dollars. I have some questions that I believe the board should ask of legal counsel, including the county attorney, that are in your backup. Some questions relating to how it impacts our resolution, how it impacts our ability to still screen for weapons, still screen for permits, do something similar in regards to the Iowa Capitol's enforcement of lawful carry. We also have the issue of our employee handbook comporting with the law as written. A lot of the discussion has been based on the supervisory order. As a board, as a political subdivision of the state, I believe most of our discussion tonight should be based on House File 517 and what it means. Action by the county board at this meeting has been requested by our attorney's office and others. It's sort of a rhetorical question when I say, does that request in itself presume the county board actually controls the additional areas claimed by the supervisory order? I think the answer is obvious. I would recommend that there be some funding of some element of courthouse security. I don't think it's right to characterize this debate as having courthouse security or not having courthouse security. But again, regardless of how we feel, and this board has taken and resisted certain changes to what we have right now in courthouse security based on how we feel and what we believe as individual board members. But that was before there was a state law in effect or coming into effect. A lot of statements can be made about how we feel, about policy opinions we have, but we have before us a law, and we have before us a supervisory order. And in cases where there may be conflict, the board has to decide what it is going to do. This may mean providing a responsive form of armed, of course, uniformed law enforcement for public areas of the courthouse and potentially other buildings. There are issues with other buildings. Not only the county courthouse has been included in the supervisory order or in the state law. Short of repealing or amending our existing 2014 resolution, which it would be hard to do today because no draft language has been submitted by anyone wanting to make a specific change, even though I did include it in the backup for everyone's view. It's safe to say that all parties recognize the need to work with the district judge we have here with us today and the security committee to amend it, regardless of what school of thought we follow as far as the law or the order. It's clear that that needs to be amended. With a weapons ban in place by resolution since 2014, and with our next board meeting being July 11th, postponing action or a deadlock vote only has the same effect as positively enacting a weapons ban in the face of House File 517. Earlier, I did not hear any objections to my request for a consensus from the board to go by the ground rules I mentioned. If there are any objections, please let me know. Otherwise, I will go forward and ask for first introductory comments from the board, and then we can call upon those for questioning.
If I may ask, and just, Mr. Chair, is it possible to hear from others before responding as a board? Just because some of what may be responded to, I think you've given a great overview of a perspective. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely, from your standpoint, but there may be other board members, and if there's not, then we can.
That would be my druthers.
No issue with that?
I would prefer to hear from others.
Okay. Then we will entertain comments from County Attorney P.J. Jennings, and when you're done, let us know and there'll be questions.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I'll try to be brief. I'm going to start with this initial proposition that I believe the County Board of Supervisors should move affirmatively to approve the continuation of the courthouse security, as well as the security of all the other county-controlled properties, specifically those that maintain judicial-type functions. And I say that for this proposition. The danger to not having courthouse security as it exists today is serious. There's no doubt about that. You can see that from examples from pretty much any county within the state of Iowa. You can also see it in other states. Most all jurisdictions have had incidents, a lot of them anyway, involving weapons. There's no disputing that. Specifically here in the state of Iowa. Happened right before we enacted our law, I believe, our ordinance, our resolution. There was an incident that happened right over in Omaha. Again, heated dispute. Participants were able to come in. They didn't use weapons, but there was a flat-out brawl. What happens if that happens here in Sioux City, Woodbury County, and weapons are allowed in the building, and we aren't able to detect those? Dire consequences, not only for people involved within the court system, but other employees that roam these halls. I'm going to hand you specifically a threat that we received here that we acted upon this year, just so that you get a sense of the potential violence that's present here, and that this is not, and I've said it before, this is no joke. This isn't something that we're just trying to regulate just because we think we ought to. This is real. Those are communications between an individual that we were prosecuting here in this county, making what we consider to be direct threats against not only us prosecuting him, but also law enforcement that arrested him and the judicial branch that was holding him accountable after we had convicted him. You reading through that, again, this is just one example. We get these almost daily. Another example that I got myself from convicting a person, the individual flat out said, those who put me in prison are going to have to answer to this. These are threats, and they happen daily. Not having courthouse security, I would venture to say what would happen. All of you know that what goes on in these courthouse buildings can be heated. Not only in the courtroom situation, we have tax issues. We have clerk's office issues. We have juvenile detention issues. We have DHS type issues. We have divorce proceedings. We have domestic abuse protection order issues. On and on and on. You can pull up pretty much any day of the week and find an instance that violence was perpetrated inside a building, most likely because there was not courthouse security preventing them from coming in prior to them entering into the door. We're talking about doing something after they've gotten in here. That's the wrong conversation to be having, in my opinion. We need to stop them before they get in here. If you're dealing with them after they get in here, you're too late. You're too late. Things might happen. And who's to say we're going to detect them once they get in here? Who's going to answer to that when we could have acted before that happened? We all know that this country is a reactionary type country. We have a position here, the ability to be reactive or proactive and stop this like we've already done. And we're not going to be asking this Board of Supervisors to do anything different than what we've already done. And I do not believe that's in violation of the law. The law allows it because it's stated in there. Yes, there's a prohibition, but there's only a prohibition if the individual can show that they've been adversely affected. That's the law. The law doesn't say you have to absolutely keep them out of here and then prove it before you allow them to have them weapons in here or allow them to disprove it. No, that's not what the law says. You just can't parse it. You have to read it together. I would also add, you just can't take House File 517 without also taking the Supreme Court order into consideration. Yes, they are separate branches, but they both matter. The Supreme Court does, per the Constitution, control the courtrooms, as well as most judicial functions. And as all of you know, that pertains to more than just what happens in the actual courtroom. People have to get to those courtrooms. They don't just go in the back door and enter right into that courtroom. They have to come through those front doors. Is that all part of that judicial function? If they don't feel safe, they aren't going to participate. They may not even come into those doors. So I think you do have to take that supervisory order into consideration. I personally don't want you to rule just on that. I think we can rule on the law itself and keep courthouse security. I believe that. Talk about getting sued. We can get sued for anything, any day of the week. Any day of the week, whether we have courthouse security or not. We're subject to a lawsuit. But again, I'm going to let other people talk. I think we need to keep it in place. This is what I think we need to do. Again, move to approve that we do not change our existing policies and resolutions. I think that's important. I don't think taking no action is the route to go. I believe we need to have an affirmative voice by the board saying we agree with that. Once we've done that, I believe we also need to post signage on the buildings, also stating that Supreme Court order, saying that no weapons are to be brought in here. That's something that we need to do, in addition to what we already have on those buildings. And then lastly, I believe the board needs to direct the county attorney's office to look at all these various policies and resolutions that we have and see if we do need to make any changes. I believe we do, because not all county property involves a judicial function. I think we need to look at that. There's no doubt about it. We also need to take into consideration our employees. If we allow people from the public to bring weapons in, do we not allow our employees to bring weapons in? I'm not going to answer that here today, but I think that's something we certainly need to look at. Thank you.
Would a board member like to ask a question of our county attorney? It's open for the rest of the item, but initial questions. What did you mean when you said the order should be taken into consideration?
The Supreme Court order, that you have to view that. I believe one of your comments is that, and excuse me if I parse your words incorrectly, but it essentially said, I'm not going to pay attention to that order. I'm going to just look at the law. And so that's what I was talking about. I don't think you can. I think you have to look at both of those, or read into both of those together.
Well, I agree. As certainly many of the comments in the order were reaffirming the need for a secure courthouse, which I don't think any of us disagree with, and I can't see courthouse security as a security force going away at all, no matter what direction this board takes. But I heard you say courtrooms in specific. The order goes, in my conversations with you, to areas that are new claims of the judiciary and areas that were not formally claimed. And certainly with the timing, board members, anyone in the public, it's pretty obvious that the supervisory order was was a reaction to the law coming into effect. And I don't know how it was related to having an impending AG's opinion that never came, but that's none of our concern. It just seemed like some sort of bait and switch on people that are actively and looking earnestly for legal counsel. This is the first time the Board of Supervisors has had legal counsel on the record, and I know that's because we all were waiting for something that didn't come, and that's just the reality of where we are. And so, again, if board members have follow-up questions, otherwise we'll invite other speakers.
Just that, I agree with you, and our conversations are real. I just think you need to read both of them. I'm just withholding my opinion of what I fully believe that supervisory order means, because, again, I haven't had time to fully study it. But under the law, just addressing the law, I think we're okay with what we're doing, and I would just ask that we continue to do so.
Mr. Chair.
I don't think there's a danger of all of our state funding being cut off if we abide by what the law appears to want, which is a blanket sort of understanding of carry permits and right of lawful carry. Certainly the blanket provision of the order has it from a different angle. Mr. Taylor?
So I think the difficulty for us as a board is that the supervisory order and a plain reading of the text of what was passed in House File 517 appear to be contradictory. And it's hard to reconcile both of those. I agree the Supreme Court does control the courtrooms, but as far as a legal argument saying, well, end all the adjacent areas therein too, what about those who are going into those courtrooms? Well, taking that, why not the sidewalks? Why not the parking garages where people park? Why not protect all of those areas as well? I think it becomes a slippery slope. And I do agree. I think the supervisory order, coming 10 days before what duly elected representatives passed into law is, to me, a bridge too far. And that's why I think it seems like it was a hurried action that is putting a lot of boards of supervisors in doubt. And I guess my other response would be, we have court in the law enforcement center last time I checked. You don't have courthouse security. You don't have people going through metal detectors over there. If the idea is to keep in place what we have right now, then we wouldn't be doing anything differently. I think what I hear Supervisor Chairman Ung saying is that courthouse security would continue to be in effect, at least in this courthouse, and that people would be screened. If, my opinion would be, if you don't have a concealed carry permit, if you're a felon who's been barred, if you have some sort of mechanism, or if you're on a list, so to speak, that person would not be allowed to carry because they've lost that right to do so. But if you're a law-abiding citizen, to me, the plain reading of House File 517, we are opening ourselves up to be sued. I know one can be sued for anything, but my opinion is that I feel the Supreme Court's Chief Justice overreached a week and a half before what people's representatives passed into law. And that's just my 2 cents in response.
I do want to say one thing I did appreciate from the order, having read it, is when the Chief Justice said courthouse security is inseparable from the concept of justice itself. That's a profound statement. In the face of the law, we need to do what we can to provide that security. So yes, we will provide security, but I don't think when the rubber meets the road, infringing upon someone's Second Amendment rights reaffirmed by a state law does not do that in regards to justice, because as we all know, every day many residents conduct business inside the courthouse that has nothing to do with the court system and public areas and public offices under the authority of the Board of Supervisors. I don't see this affecting a single entrance. I don't see it affecting screening for lawful carry, and I don't see it affecting the grounds for removal would be trespassing. The state law, of course, expressly forbids an ordinance as our enforcement to remove someone that contradicts House File 517. So actually protecting, identifying someone who should not be here, the actual mechanism to remove is the same. There's also been a lot of discussion about stickers on different county buildings. What should they say? Should they be tied to an order? Should they be tied to a code? Should they be tied to a policy? I spent a lot of time looking at what everyone else has had to say about this, because again, this is the first time the board as a whole has had a chance to discuss this, and unfortunately it's not our doing that the timing is what it is and we have to make a decision before the fiscal year ends. But I know that our sheriff is a proponent of the supervisory order. But even he said on a KMEG 14 newscast, June 21st, I've never been a fan of a sticker that says this is a gun-free zone. I think that sticker is worthless. And I would have to agree. If our enforcement is based on contempt of court, I don't see that as acting as a political subdivision of the state where our enforcement is based on a law that we can point to. Because as we know, everyone will find out what their rights are, and it's our job to be proactive and say we've done our best to respond to, respect the supervisory order's authority where it applies, and to respect the intent of the law as written. Clearly, the threats of danger are expressed at the Iowa Capitol. I can't imagine a more nerve-wracking time to be in one of those offices, given the bills that have been debated and passed. And so this debate has already taken place at the state legislature. It does not, again, I'm trying not to get into how I feel about different areas of policy, because we can affect policy, I believe, where we have that authority to do so. But I believe it's been set, and words have been put to paper, and there's something that we need to base our enforcement of law upon.
Mr. Chair, may we hear from others who might want to speak on the issue?
Two real quick comments before I, heed the microphone. One, and I'm glad you brought up the security in the other two buildings. We were taking this in the process, and had the board appropriated enough money for all three buildings, we would have full security in those buildings. So I don't want that to seem as though that's a plight against the security within the county, because we just didn't have the money, or otherwise it'd be there. The other part is and I don't know the answer, but I want to, when we talk about screening after they're in here, what good is screening going to do once they're in here? We just going to leave them in here with weapons? Okay, we know that he has a gun. We're going to leave him in here. Are we saying we're going to kick him out once we find out that they have a weapon? I don't think so.
I think the idea would be that if somebody is a law-abiding citizen, you can, my understanding, I am no gun expert, so if you'll forgive my ignorance, but you can always ask to see a concealed carry permit. And if somebody doesn't have a concealed carry permit, or they're not lawfully carrying, that can be the screening mechanism. Or if somebody doesn't have that, then they don't have that ability to come into the courthouse. That would be the screening mechanism that I would assume would be in place. I don't mean after the fact that you're running and chasing someone down. I mean as far as a screening mechanism coming in. That to me would seem and yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road in this whole argument, whether or not somebody who is a law-abiding citizen, who hasn't committed a felony, who hasn't forfeited that, so to speak, the answer would be yes. And going to the auditor's office, for lack of a better example, or somewhere else, then we expect that person would, as they do everywhere else on the sidewalk or in the parking garage, would act responsibly. Just to be able to respond, if that's...
And I would add that credible threats are always responded to by our courthouse security. There's no doubt that those exist.
Thank you.
Thank you. County Auditor Pat Gill like to...
Anybody else?
Okay.
I'll step in at this time. Dwayne Hoffmeyer, Chief Judge, 3rd Judicial District. Maybe I can put a little historical perspective into some of the actions that have been taken. First, under the Iowa Code, the Sheriff's Office has the responsibility for court security. So that's the law, and that's where we start at. The chief judges, the 8 chief judges that compose the Judicial Council, asked the Supreme Court if they would consider entering some type of an order that could be consistent throughout the state. If you saw the Supreme Court order, there's 72 different orders floating around in different counties in one form or another, and if we could just get some sort of consistency. We likewise hoped for and anticipated maybe the Iowa Attorney General would jump in and help clarify this situation. Because we know the judicial branch is not a political subdivision, we're not a city or a county, and arguably this law doesn't apply to us. And so we were trying to help and give some guidance to how we should handle these situations around the state. That also dealt when, while the legislation was going on, Representative Winchell, who chaired or ran the bill on the House side of things, is quoted in the Des Moines Register as the reason for carrying the guns would be the safety of the individual, and if you're providing for the safety of the individual, they would be hard-pressed to prevail on any suit on why they think they would need that. And that was his statement as to that. Senator Dawson, who ran the bill on the Senate side of things, is from Potawatomi, a former DCI agent. He has stated that he does not anticipate that Potawatomi would have to change its courtroom security. They are, like we are, a single point secure access security. So I think, we have the statements from the two that were involved in it, and this, the Iowa Attorney General, as I understand it, said, why do we need to say again what we said in 2003? that the cities and counties can do this when the only thing the bill significantly changed was the private cause of action. And so that's why I think they've been hesitant, and I think lots of people have leaned on them to say, can't you help us out here a little bit? The chief judge's supervisory order, I think you need to say, didn't come out of left field. That was worked out with ISAC. I mean, they participated with the judicial branch in the drafting and some of the language in that bill. So it is not from the judicial branch only. It is from part of the city and counties that are involved in that. I'm not aware, from sitting on judicial council and hearing my colleagues that talk about this issue, aware of any county to date that is changing their security policy on courtroom security. As far as I know, all of those that have single point scanning, none anticipate changing, and that Polk County, Waterloo, Blackhawk, and us are some of those. So I think that the preemption issue is a little in the gray area, but when you look at the authors, when they talk about court security, I think from my perspective, and I anticipate at some point in time, depending upon the actions taken by this board, plan on entering an administrative order, and it really will not do much more than reaffirm the sheriff's obligation to provide security, but it's my thought that if they're acting and protecting part of my order and part of the responsibilities under the Iowa Code, they'll be hard-pressed to be sued for a county action if they're acting as part of the court security function. So I view the administrative orders, whether from the Supreme Court or myself, as a way to assist counties in liability exposure issues that may come up. And I think that needs to be pointed out as well. We're not really asking for anything more than what currently exists for the county courthouse. I had Mr. Gilliam run the numbers of the number of individuals here in the building, because it is a multi-use facility. The majority of the employees in this building are judicial branch or county court-related folks. And we have a majority on almost every floor. And so, you know, single point access and scanning there, because what I'm hoping for is through the administrative order or a continuation of this policy is, it is indeed someone will test it. We all know, or I anticipate that will happen. And I don't want judges who control their courtrooms to say, I want a court security or a bailiff in every room. We had that not that long ago when I started practicing law in the 80s, and we've kind of migrated away from that. And so my thought is a continuation of the current practice would avoid many of those types of issues. It would avoid getting the sheriff put in the seat of where they're having to respond on a regular or a daily basis to do that. For the Trosper Hoyt, I was talking with the plan on talking with the sheriff's office individuals. Our plan is that if we see a weapon and that we would simply suspend our case, contact the sheriff, have them present, and if we now have security, then they would have to say, why do you need to carry a firearm for your own personal safety if we have security present? And that would be one means of dealing with that, but I'll defer to working with Sheriff Drew on if there's a better practice or policy on how that can take place. You know, practically speaking, for those gun owners, and I'm a Second Amendment advocate, those are not our problems. The gang violence case, it's the open carry. Do you want gang members who have been involved in a shooting or jumping of other individuals, do you want them in your courtroom open carrying? Or do you want them in the courthouse open carrying? The concealed weapon permit is kind of an easy way of resolving that. But it's the open carry portion of this is that what I think we need to be cautious of and concerned about with our employees, with the jurors who already, when we're coming and when I go and talk to them, they look out and they think there's scary people sitting out in the courtroom, and sometimes they are scary people. And, you know, it's how do we protect the jurors that we're expecting to come in and help us resolve some of these disputes. So, you know, that's where I'm not anticipating, you know, the common area. You know, I don't think you want firearm. The law enforcement center, we have single point, everything through there. I'll defer to the sheriff on whether he wants open carry or concealed weapons that close to the jail. That's his call, not mine. But really all we're talking about is where I hear the public access issues is the lobby of the law enforcement center and maybe the lobby of the Trosper Hoyt building. If you can find a better point, but everybody channels through there. And so I'm willing to work with that, and I think the judges were not asking for anything different than that, but certainly the open carry portion of that and the fact we're not covered by the bill, the fact that we're willing to give an administrative order to protect the Sheriff's Department from liability ought to be viewed as we're trying to work with you on this and to try to figure out a way of still allowing an individual to have their Second Amendment rights, but we're also providing individuals that will protect them when they're in a setting that we control. I can't help but think that this at least wasn't somewhat contemplated because the other new bill passed this year was a new crime of interference with official acts, as if a bailiff directs somebody, leave, take your weapon outside, for example. They created that as a crime. That's something new. That was not in the code. And so, I think the judge controls the courtroom and can use contempt of court. The county attorney mentioned criminal trespass, and we have this other interference with official acts of individuals who don't want to go outside or put it in the lockbox or something like that. And so that's what I think is the background between this, is to try to give some consistency so we don't have this hodgepodge of different actions around the state, or different chief judges, 8 districts writing separate orders, and at least having some consistency. Because the threats are out there, and they appear regularly. Yesterday there was an individual whose picture is on the screen here, got in and was on second floor yelling and hollering. I've been the subject in the last 2 weeks of threats in Plymouth County, and understand it rose to the level I was part of the process when the shifts go out in the Sioux City PD department. So, I mean, it's present, and there's a need for it. And so, with that, I'll answer any questions that I can, if you have any.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you very much, Judge. One of the questions I have is, you seem to imply that the jurisdiction of courthouse security is solely under the discretion of the sheriff. Would that be?
The sheriff is legally responsible for courthouse security, yes.
So in the inception, was that something that was brought up as far as when it was not under? I mean, one of the ironies of this is that it didn't start off being under the sheriff's office. Is that correct? And was that argument made that?
That's totally separate from the supervisory order, if that's what you're bringing up. I think it's in Iowa Code 331 somewhere. I can give you the code site for it. It's been there a long time.
Okay. But was that argument brought up by you or others when the inception of courthouse security came up and was implemented in Woodbury County as far as being under the sheriff's purview?
Oh, absolutely. That's why ISAC has court security committees that are existing in every county around the state, where the supervisors sit on that. I mean, that came out of the ISAC board, and judges had been asking for improved court security for some time. So, yes.
Okay. I was just confused on that because when we first started courthouse security, it was not underneath the sheriff's purview to implement, and it was something that he had argued for and wanted, and I didn't hear that argument made at the time.
I think that was more from the supervisor's perspective than the sheriff or the judge's perspective.
Okay.
Jokingly, it was referred to as part of the judge's retirement plan because there's numerous letters to the supervisors saying we want court security, and if and when anything bad had happened, I suspect all of those letters would have been produced as part of any claim, yes.
And then my follow-on question is regarding Representative Winchell. Are you aware that he believes the supervisory order does not pertain to non-public or non-court areas?
Well, I think some of the statements he's made has contributed to some of this uncertainty of what applies. I just quoted what Sheriff Drew gave to me that he is quoted in the Des Moines Register as saying that if it's security that is the motive for the act and the carry, if you can provide security, he felt any individual would be hard-pressed to be successful. That's the extent of how I'm going to quote him. So.
And I just wanted to have on record, I spoke with Representative Winchell this past week, and he believes that the supervisory order being over non-courtroom areas and public space would not be something that he believes would be in the intent of the legislation that he passed. So I just wanted to make sure that that was also
Let
kind
me
of entered.
clarify. Okay. I also am aware that he's used the Potawatomi as an example that he thinks is acceptable. What he cites often is if he goes to, is he from Harrison County? I can't remember his home county seat, where they don't have access, they don't have security, and all they have is the sign on the building. He thinks that he ought to be able to carry in those situations, and I think that is, I understand that part of his position.
But would that not be the exact same situation that we would be in the law enforcement center and in the Trosper Hoyt building, if one were to post decal stickers and a supervisory order without having, we would be in the exact same situation as Representative Winchell's.
And I agree, and that's why the court action is that we will not go forward under those circumstances. So we will contact the sheriff. I mean, that's my thoughts on the matter. We will contact the sheriff and say, under the circumstances, we need a court security person here. We have someone with a firearm. We don't know if they're entitled to have a firearm. Are they a felon? Do they have a carry permit? That can be checked out. And then if they are going to stay, if that's what the judge asks for, then I think one legitimately could ask, we have your safety covered. Can you lock your firearm up or take it out to your car?
So just so I'm understanding, if this is all right, what would be being proposed is that we do not ban with decals and stickers and a supervisory order at the law enforcement center where we have court functions, but that we do so in the courthouse where we have court functions.
I think you should have the poster so people are at least aware court functions take place in this building, because they do.
But my biggest concern is that we're not only a hodgepodge across counties. I think we're going to become a hodgepodge within our own county. I don't know, as a law-abiding citizen, can I bring, I'm a concealed carry permit holder, can I bring my weapon into this area, or can I bring my weapon into that? And it seems like there's a contradiction just within the last explanation. If I have Representative Winchell's situation where there's not courthouse security provided across the street, you're relying on the visibility of someone within there contacting the sheriff's office. However, if I'm in the courthouse and I do have a screening mechanism, do you see where the practicality for us as supervisors becomes very problematic?
Well, I don't understand. I don't see it that way, I guess. Okay. So the one example I use for Representative Winchell is if no security is present whatsoever. Okay, I understand that arguably could be a position taken. What I'm just saying is what I and my judges to date have talked about is when that's presented to us, this is the action that we're going to be taking. So I think that there are different questions, you know, if court is in session, if we're holding court, and if there's an open carry, which I view as more problematic than some of the concealed weapons permits, then I think we ought to be able to ask them that we will not go forward with this court case until this situation is resolved. So.
And I can appreciate that. I don't know how to explain it to the person on the street, whether or not what they can or cannot do in two buildings that both have court functions. And I think that in and of itself is a real problem.
And, sorry.
Go ahead.
In my conversations with the sheriff, he has never claimed courthouse security. He's certainly claimed courtroom security, which is abundantly understood, I think, from this board. Certainly if he did claim courthouse in its entirety security, the debate with the previous board on whether or not the security should be privately contracted or provided by the office would have been within the sheriff's purview to simply do. But it was board action that made that happen. The other comment before going to Supervisor Potawatomi is, I understand the consistency desire. It's easier. The problem I have with it in this case is there's also the consistency. Also the state law was signed for consistency of a different type of lawful carry. That's the consistency that the state law endeavors towards. And so I can understand the need for consistency in providing public safety, but also public safety through lawful gun ownership and possession and et cetera. So Supervisor Potabom.
Just a couple of questions pertaining to this building and pertaining to what the Supreme Court ruling was, or not ruling, but its orders. The area is under control of the courts. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, in my mind, it's pretty broad because I happen to know that jury selection's under court purview. And I know the jurors sign up upstairs in the big atrium, they come down here. And I saw the sheriff talking about juror intimidation was one of the things he was worried about, having people with firearms near where jury selection is taking place. And I read both the law and to truthfully, having the two different things come out made it even more confusing for me. But the one thing I was looking at is and you talked about consistency, and it's hard for me to say, okay, the courts are in charge of the courtrooms on second floor. That's all we're going to worry about as far as having weapons. But your juries are sitting down here, they're signing them up in the main lobby. And it just, to me, it just gets it even more clouded in my mind.
Well, and that's the reason why I mentioned to you that at least in this building, the majority of the employees, take the auditor and Mr. Gill's offices aside, and I think maybe fifth floor. I think otherwise, between the county attorney and the judicial branch, there's a majority on almost every floor. And to try to do security on some floors and not others seems to be just counterproductive and not cost effective for the taxpayers or for you. And so that's why it seems to me that at least the existing security for Woodbury County is a cost-effective method of doing this, because we're on many different areas and floors. We may be changing even some more at some of the requests, and it just seems to be a cost-effective way of dealing with this building with the single-point access, because it's worked well. I've got absolutely no complaints, issues whatsoever with the security that's been provided here. And for that matter, when we've needed them, and at Trosper-Hoyt or the Law Enforcement Center, they come. They can talk about the delay a little bit from time to time, but they come, and that's what we're hoping will continue if and when we call.
Any other questions for the District Chief Judge?
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Tony Wiegert from the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff's is at the National Sheriff Conference this week, but a couple things I'd like to hit on. There are two parts, like PJ says and the judge says. You got the new law and then you got the order. And I'm speaking strictly as law enforcement. We're always the tether ball in the middle. We're being told which way to go. As far as the law, the new law that is concerned, right, ISSDA, the Iowa State Sheriff's and Deputy Association, they're operating under the counties that have the existing one-point court security. We're going to keep operating that way. That's the way we're interpreting it. Now we go to the Supreme Court, the court order. That is our duty, is to carry out those orders. And when instructed by the court, and there have been numerous times every law enforcement in here can say, no offense, Your Honor, we may not have agreed with what the judge put, but I'm going to go take that child away from that parent, and I'm going to go give it to that parent. Or I'm going to kick that person out of their house because this person gets their house, because that's what the court's ordered. We're in the middle there. So it's our opinion that with this new order, this building is full of court officials, and exactly what was just said. You have things that happen on this floor, things that happen on every floor. There is no good way to protect that, but to protect it at one point. And that's what we're going to continue to do, is protect it. Mr. Taylor, you said about the LAC and Trosper-Hoyt. Why don't they rise that? We had numerous conversations about wanting to get security, the same kind of security, and budgetary reasons, we weren't able to do that. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but it's not like we forgot about the LAC or Trosper Hoyt. It just wasn't feasible to get it done at that time. I have a question that just arose. You brought up, individual comes in, he goes through a scanner, he's got a firearm. I don't know what the law is if my court security guys, who are not certified peace officers in the state of Iowa, have the right to ask them to produce their weapons permit. I don't know the answer to that question. PJ, I don't know if you can help that. I know certified peace officers, they have a duty to produce their permit to a certified peace officer. The ladies and gentlemen that work up there, they're not. So I don't know if that means we have to hire certified deputies to work that position. That's a question that I'm going to have to research and find out, because I don't know what legal right they have to ask, and if a civilian has to produce that to a court security officer. So that's just something that just came up while we were talking. I don't know. So we're law enforcement. You tell us what to do, we're going to enact it to the best we can. I know the sheriff's position and our position is, it makes it a lot easier to keep this building 1 point, no weapons, because it just controls the situation. So, thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Can I just make one quick comment? One other thing, and I appreciate it, but not only what you do, but I also appreciate the kind of dicey waters or the tetherball analogy that you find yourselves in. I hope it's also appreciated that the board may not matter to us in some ways what our opinion or druthers would be. We want to carry, or at least my position, I think what I hear the chairman saying is, we want to carry out the law as well, whether or not, what the plain reading of that law is. And I think there's a constitutional question there as well. You talk about carrying out an order, and we're looking at, are we complying with the law as it was passed, instead of relying on something that wasn't from a duly elected representative body. That's another angle or another aspect of this. So I just wanted that said.
Thank you. Could someone from existing courthouse security let the board know, are most disarmaments currently from permit holders who simply don't know that the county has had since 2014 a weapons ban? Because when we talk about effectiveness, of course, it's not necessarily that disarmed people are coming in intending to cause harm, is it?
We've had both. We've made arrests when people have been armed coming into the building without a permit to carry, and we've had people come in with a permit to carry and they're asked to leave their weapon in a lockbox, gun box, or someplace else outside the courthouse.
Mr. Taylor.
Can I ask to that point then, how was it that if they're non-certified peace officers that they can ask to see that? Does that make sense, that question? Because we were just hearing that was kind of a point of contention.
Because there's a ban currently in the courthouse until July 1st.
Okay. My brain just caught up with my mouth. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And just one comment on that, going back to the prior people up there, you can ask anything. It's just whether or not they have to show it to you. I mean, anybody can say, I want to see your permit. But if they say, go fly a kite, can you go further?
I would just like to comment that I think more than anybody, that's all things revolving around. I think the sheriff is in the trick bag more than anybody, because we do have to abide by a court order. Am I not correct, PJ?
I'd like to say yes.
And
all the orders are subject to interpretation.
So it's the sheriff that's in the tough position right now. Any questions?
Dwayne Hoffman, if there's nobody else here, I would just say that's when I mentioned my administrative order. This would be the example of where I could clarify, and help that situation out, so you don't have to hire, deputies or anything. That as part of the administrative order I could maybe set up. They're entitled to ask, 1, 2, and 3. And if that would help protect the sheriff from liability, that's certainly something I'm ready and willing and able to do. If working with the sheriff, there's some magic language that they need or think that I could help in those situations for. Because keeping in mind that the judicial branch is not covered by this bill, and we have the statute on security to rely on. So those are where I think we can act.
Magic language.
If it helps you, I'm willing.
County Auditor Pat Gill.
Thank you, Pat. County Auditor Pat Gill. A question didn't come up while I'm listening to this. I hope somebody can answer this question, because I did talk to, exchange a text message with Sheriff Drew today, is that it appears to me, regardless of the action you take, the sheriff is still going to implement security the way it is, because he's been ordered to do so. Is that correct? That's what's going to occur. So I don't know how that's all going to play out. But I wanted to talk about when Supervisor Taylor mentioned the auditor's office, and I want to preface this with an initial discussion that I had with Supervisor Ung, is that when it came out, I thought, boy, sounds like an overreach to me when that order came out, but I was glad, I was relieved. Sometimes I like to try to think that I'm an attorney, but I'm not one. And I think when you're talking about abiding by the law as written, I don't think you should discount the judiciary being part of that law. You have to operate under case law all the time. They obviously have some sort of a role to play in this. But one of the things that I want to talk to you, because Supervisor Taylor brought that up, I've been here for 20 years, and I think that's a good thing, because you folks do come and ask sometimes about what things have occurred in the past. And I'm going to relate 3 incidents. When we first talked about security, I was quoted in the journal as being, I like the fact that I get to rely on something besides my wit when those type of situations come up. Because I read Supervisor Ong put something in there about that there was some sort of response team ready to go. But to tell you about the 3 incidents that occurred, unless you're going to have a SWAT team with everybody comes in that has a gun, that's not going to protect us. I'm very concerned about that, because I experienced that real fear on 3 different occasions that occurred. And elections is one. People get very emotional about elections. So we had this young lady come in, and she came in with a backpack. This was before security. And she was talking, and she got agitated. I came to the front to visit with her, and she wanted to cancel her voter registration. But I explained to her that even though it's going to be canceled, it's still going to be on the record that she was registered here in Woodbury County. She became very upset, very angry, and she went over and grabbed that backpack and started ripping things out, and I was looking for a place to dive to. I honestly was. Because in that situation, if she would have pulled a firearm at that point, there was nothing that I was going to do about it. And it has occurred in courthouses. It has occurred in those situations. And there was another time. There was when the judge was talking about going into the auditor's office, there was a former police officer that had mental issues that was not happy with what they had told him in the clerk of court's office. So he came over and started, he was agitated with us just because we're here in the office. So we're part of the building and we're part of the overflow. And that's, I really liked the feeling that those folks are out there, and I know my employees do too. Before the security was put in place, I thought that was a shame that we were going to have to do that, a single point. But boy, we all enjoy it now. The benefit of feeling that security is there. The third incident I talk about is in the Board of Supervisors room, is that there was an individual, and I didn't really know what was going on. Sheriff Parrott was in the back at that time, and there was another officer there. And there was an individual that brought a blanket into the Board of Supervisors meeting. And at the end of the meeting, he approached the blanket with this blanket to give to the board. And I think that he did it on purpose. I think he was trying to terrorize us. I think it was to instill real fear. And it did. Because I saw Sheriff Parrott reach for his pistol on his side. And when I saw that, I thought something was up. And we joked about it afterwards, but I thought that I could beat the chairperson under his desk before that guy got to it. But that was real fear. And so what I'm asking you is that you take the advice, the county attorney. I think this is going to, somewhere, there's going to be some judicial clarification that's going to take place. And I'm asking you just to ride that out and to take his advice and to ride it out until it's clarified. Because I think that, I know that feelings are real on both sides of the issue, but I think it's important that that security remains in place until that question is answered. I respectfully ask you to do that. Thank you.
Question, if you don't mind. What further clarification would you be referring to?
Well, I think that somewhere along in the state, somebody's going to get sued over the deal.
Okay, by litigation, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. For the sheriff to find and exercise powers he has asked, and his office have asked the Board of Supervisors to decide upon tonight, especially given the deference to the law of law enforcement and to the board in the past, would be ill-advised. The board funds courthouse security. It's too bad he's not here tonight. But
Well, even in the budget, though, as line items, courthouse and courtroom were two separate deals, I think, were they not?
Thank you.
Delineated for a
Yes.
reason? And that's where I had brought up the question then, you know, why are we paying for courthouse and courtroom security when all we're required to secure is the courtrooms? And I thought it was redundant then. I still am of the opinion of that now. No offense to anybody, but, you know, I feel that when you take the oath that, you know, you're going to preserve and protect the Constitution, that comes first. And I always felt like the courthouse security was kind of overstepping the bounds of the realm of the County Board of Supervisors. That was my opinion then, and I still have that opinion.
and as, sorry, go
The
ahead.
good thing about opinions is we all have one. And really the opinions mean less to me than the law and the supervisory order. To me, those are the two conflicting items.
So between those two, which one would you say?
Well, you got to remember, I was a policeman for a lot of years. And he's right, law enforcement is told to enforce the law until they get into a courtroom and a judge tells them what it really is. And that's where they're the tetherball. Because they enforce the law the way they read it, and then a judge tells them yes or no, that wasn't the way it was. And then they go back the other way around the pole as the tetherball. In my years as a police officer, and I follow the law exact the way I read it, the way I interpret it, the way I'm told to, or the way a judge tells me to. And that's what I always did.
Trying to take your pulse on this issue because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Supervisor.
I don't think there's a debate that there's a difference spelled out in code, Iowa Constitution, what have you, regarding courtrooms. None of us dispute being under the purview of the judiciary and public areas, what that means, how far that extends. We do live in a fallen society. I don't know, I wish I could speak the magic words similar to magic language and say that that's not going to be an issue because we, for whatever reason, have a culture that is more law-abiding. But it's, you know, people abide by laws. That's the expectation. But I can't guarantee that no matter what the county does, that something bad isn't going to happen, and that in areas adjacent to courtrooms, that someone's going to have something out for somebody. We can only do what we feel is in the best interest of providing that security for our employees. And so as a board, we have had the difference of opinion on what level of courthouse security is appropriate. I'm comfortable with the funding and with the staffing and with the protection provided. But I'm also comfortable saying I'm a Second Amendment person, just like the sheriff and just like the chief judge, but also in my position have to be a separation of powers person. When the rubber meets the road, if all these entities are asking the board to decide and then the board decides and then the sheriff says, well, I'm not going to do that, and I don't know, why'd you ask for us to decide?
The one, and you caught my attention when you said we're a law-abiding society. I wish we were. Unfortunately, I see it being less of that. I really do. And Second Amendment, I have a gun permit. I have a concealed carry. Mine, thankfully, I have to qualify to get mine, or you don't have to qualify to go over to the sheriff and get a permit to carry. And I'm a strong believer in everybody having the right to carry. But I also agree with every right comes a responsibility. I don't bring mine in here because we don't allow it.
To try to move this off a dead center, Supervisor Mr. Chairman, you have an action required or proposed motion. Do you want to speak to that? So I'm just kind of wondering where we go from here, and if we have an up or down vote on something, and if it,
Sure. And I don't want to preclude anyone from commenting or addressing the board if there were any other comments before we entertain motions or board members.
Crickets.
Crickets. Again, it doesn't matter how we feel, in my opinion. This is an obligation that we have as a board of supervisors to take action, irrespective of what other counties have done or not done or sought to avoid. The dream of consistency is in some cases a path to ignore the subdivisions, and the code mentions cities and counties. The Iowa legislature has talked before about going from 99 counties down to 50. I imagine that would bring a lot more consistency. Why don't they do that? That's a discussion for them, just like this was on this issue. When we talk about interpreting, the board has to do the exact same thing. And when, for whatever reason, the different branches of government put local bodies in a position where they have a week to decide on a law versus a supervisory order, and doing what they think is best, because in the end, whether or not there's damages or whether or not it's seen as a detriment, the board makes a decision, the board's going to be named, the board bears the responsibility. Nothing in this motion should be construed to circumvent the authority of the judicial branch under the Iowa Constitution to ban firearms in their own courtrooms. This board must support their power to do so. I move to lift the 2014 weapons ban policy and resolution where it applies to legally carried firearms as provided by Iowa Code and House File 517, to request the Sheriff's Office to continue to staff a single courthouse entrance with screening for lawful carry permits as exercised at the Iowa Capitol, and to direct the Security Committee to bring an amended policy or resolution before the board which complies with this motion.
Second.
Can I ask something out of curiosity?
Yes.
In 2011, it shows another resolution 10795. Was that amended by the previous resolution? Because that's another weapons ban.
The resolution mentions it was, parts of it were repealed or the whole was repealed.
Okay.
Provision is hereby repealed.
So 10.
That applies to the Woodbury County Courthouse.
Because resolution 10795 applies to all county buildings, that there was a weapons ban. But like I said before, we don't even have a way of enforcing that.
Stickers.
Yeah.
Mr. DeWitt.
This issue is a conflict of interest for me, and I have been advised to withhold comments, and I will abstain from a vote.
Have you been advised to withhold comments? I would welcome your comments.
I have been advised to withhold comments.
Okay.
Believe me, I have lots, but I've been advised to withhold.
Supervisor DeWitt admirably serves as courthouse security, and we think you do a good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Gilliland, Human Resources Director.
My question would be, if we're moving to ban or to allow weapons in the courthouse for those with the permit, proper permit, what about employees with proper permits then? Will they then be part of this, and will then employees be able to carry in the building?
I would assume yes. I think in the state order, does it not say that you cannot ban your employees?
State order, you mean state?
State law. Sorry, yeah, whatever. House file, insert numbers.
If a political subdivision of the state prior to, on, or after July 1, 2017 adopts, makes, enacts, or amends any ordinance, measure, enactment, rule, resolution, motion, or policy regulating the ownership, possession, legal transfer, lawful transportation, registration, or licensing of firearms when the ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation, registration, or license is otherwise lawful under the laws of the state, no mention of employment, a person adversely affected by the ordinance, measure, enactment, rule, resolution, motion, or policy may file suit in the appropriate court for declaratory and injunctive relief for damages.
So, yeah.
Employees should be able to carry if they have a permit.
Again, the state passed this law. Don't look to the county as the one that went to the Iowa Capitol, engaged in these debates, although we all have our opinions.
Maybe we could do like a discount program for employees to get their concealed carry permit, make it the scariest.
Almost made it through the whole meeting, Keith. We almost made it through the whole meeting. But thank you for the constructive.
Kenny would take the discount, right?
Is there discussion from the board or public on the motion? I'm not going to be accused of steamrolling this, so is there a request to call the question?
Yes, call the question.
Will the auditor please call the roll?
Abstain.
No.
Ready?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes 3-1 with Supervisor DeWitt abstaining. Sorry? Thank you to the room for respectful discussion. If we can do this in all issues, then we won't have the high-tempered fears in the Iowa Capitol that they had this year.
Mr. Chairman, I have a letter from the sheriff. He'd like he wanted to read after the vote.
Could we address that during board concerns?
Our
Thank you.
citizens' concern.
Or so, yes. I would anticipate the security committee being called before the next regular meeting to address the motion. We'll now move on to item 19, the chairman's report. First is Siouxland Regional Transportation and Planning Association Policy Board. The Transportation Improvement Progress Report updated the board, was given to update the board on different projects impacting the region. Again, I think everything is going very well with Simcoe staff. Also, item B, Siouxland Regional Transit System Board of Directors meeting on June 22nd, the same day. There was still a recognition that revenues from the transit system are coming in very, very strong, but are not being budgeted for because it'll be budgeted for new equipment yet or a new transfer station because there are thoughts that it won't continue. And then finally, Western Regional Housing Trust Fund. Don't have much to report there. A mini grant was granted to Cherokee County, one of the member counties, and a housing assistance plan was approved for 2018. The wait list is very long, and so there is discussion of how proactive the group should be in promoting what they provide because it's subject to fluctuating state funding. Now move on to item 20, reports on committee meetings. Just take this time to remind everyone there is no board meeting on the 4th of July. We move on to citizen concerns. Sorry?
I was waiting for anybody else, but I did have planning and zoning. I was there for an hour. I had to go back to work, but it was just basically a discussion on the changing of zoning for a port facility to be built, and basically regardless of whether or not they subdivide the property, the owner can still put the hog confinement on the property. So it was kind of just a venting meeting for those that didn't want a hog confinement near them. And then today we had Sioux Rivers, which I missed the first few minutes because of the detour and everything, but we did discuss that in July there will not be a meeting for Sioux Rivers, so Karen, if you want to note that on our meetings. And then for August, it's going to be moved to the 17th instead of the 4th Tuesday. It's going to be the 3rd Tuesday because of ISAC having events going on. So put that in your meetings list there, Jeremy, too.
Thank you.
That's it.
We're now on item 21, citizen concerns.
I have a letter here from Sheriff Girl. He wanted you each to have a copy, and he asked me to read it. Sorry, man.
You're gone.
No Freudian thing there, just happened to knock
I
yours
almost
over.
dove under my desk there. Thank you.
from June 27, 2017, Matthew Young, Board Chairman. This is Sheriff in writing. The Iowa Code requires that the sheriff to perform particular duties. Some of these duties are part of a day-to-day business, while others involve the protection and safety of the citizens of this county. There are few, if any, of my responsibilities that are more important than ensuring the safety and security of the public and being certain that orders of the court are followed. Specifically, it is my responsibility to provide security in the courthouse. We have successfully maintained security in the Woodbury County Courthouse since August of 2013. Courts hear difficult and sometimes volatile cases where a law enforcement presence is necessary. Judges, attorneys, court and county office staff, jurors, and the general public need to be confident and feel secure while they are in the courthouse. We serve as not only security in general, but as a deterrent to individuals who may otherwise believe there is nothing to stop them from carrying out a grudge or reacting violently to a decision someone in the courthouse has made. On June 19, 2017, the Iowa Supreme Court addressed the issue of weapons in courthouses and judicial centers across the state of Iowa. This supervisory order states, in part, the court now concludes Iowa's unified court system requires a consistent, uniform, and statewide policy prohibiting all weapons from courtrooms, court-controlled spaces, and public areas of the courthouses and other justice centers. Finally, the court has ordered the following. Accordingly, under our constitutional authority and responsibility to supervise and administer Iowa district courts, the Supreme Court now orders that all weapons are prohibited from courtrooms, court-controlled spaces, and public areas of courthouses and other justice centers occupied by the court system. Sheriffs don't take sides in court orders. They carry out whatever the court renders. Therefore, I will continue providing security at the entry point to the courthouse, including preventing firearms from entering the building. Lastly, I'm extremely disappointed that the Board of Supervisors has chosen to politicize this to protect their own political capital. At times, our positions require us to make difficult decisions. However, this decision is simple. The Iowa Supreme Court has rendered an opinion and order. It is the court's directive, and the court is confident that the sheriff will carry out this order. Sheriff Dave Drew.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just point out that part of our bylaws talk about questioning the motivations of elected officials. And I know that Sheriff Drew is not here, but we all have our deeply held beliefs. We respect the judges. We respect the sheriffs. But I just want to point out that that portion of why the Board of Supervisors is taking action tonight, I think is an overreach to say that it's motivated by political capital rather than deeply held beliefs. So I just wanted that opinion.
It's a violation of our bylaws.
Right, that's what
Not that that seems to matter to the sheriff in this instance. Thank you.
The other thing, if I could,
Yeah.
just because I assume members of the board concerns opponents portion.
Yes.
I understand things take us away, I was taken away from the last couple of meetings, but I also think it's disappointing not to have that ahead of the vote. I understand that our sheriff may choose to act contradictory to both the Code of Iowa that's now passed and what the Board of Supervisors passes. I would be curious if he plans to do the same thing at the Law Enforcement Center and or Trust with White, but again, that's a conversation to be decided whether he believes to act on his own authority. However, we see that House File 517 enacts a citizen that if they feel that their rights have been abrogated to be able to bring suit, clearly it would not be against the Board of Supervisors in this instance.
Clearly. The political battle has already taken place, I would say, to the sheriff. That's how the law was passed. Courts don't make law. Any other comments?
Yeah, I was going to make one, but I was wait till you were done.
Go ahead.
And again, there's the tetherball effect for law enforcement. You're right, courts don't make law. Courts interpret laws. They interpret laws and they order law enforcement agencies how to enforce them. And the tetherball goes around the pole. And we all have our own opinions, and I like the fact that we were able to sit here and not get down on each other, that we know our opinions will differ, and we all live with that.
Yes.
I've always believed in being professional in what I do, and if we are going to have different opinions on how we govern, and that's the way it should be in our system. And we should be able to have those differences of opinions in a professional way.
So tomorrow night, you're all where?
We are at a town hall meeting in Bronson.
But I will not be there. Because I will be with the Lake Charles, Louisiana crew that is up here. I'm in, as the ball captain of the Sioux City crew, Day Charlies do. I'm in charge of entertaining our sister city folks. And I will do that well.
Which I'm sure you will.
Yes, I will.
That's what I was waiting for earlier, Mr. Potabom. I saw a head come up. Mr. Gillen.
As the non-political person in this talk, I duck well. But I would just ask the message that we should provide our employees. And I'm asking questions that really don't have any answers at this point. What I think I'm hearing is that we will have security going forward in the courthouse. But there's some disagreement as to whether we should or not, but we will have. Is that what I'm hearing?
We will have courthouse security.
I mean, like,
but we will not have, upon the law's enactment, a ban on firearms in accordance with Iowa code.
okay, so because from what I was hearing.
The sheriff disagrees, but Director Gilliland is hired by the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, yeah, I'm just trying to find where the middle ground is so I know how to work with the employees and how to let them know, how to communicate with them. Because that's what my job is, of course, to implement what you guys direct. I guess that's all I'm asking is, what should I let the employees, how do we communicate that to the employees?
Are you asking how the email should be phrased at this moment?
Yes.
I don't have an email ready for you, Ed.
Okay, yes, because that's kind of where I'm going. And that's, I think, based on the meeting tonight, there'll be a lot of concern from the employees wondering what to expect over the next few steps. And so I think, but if we can craft something over the next few days, that would be great. Because,
My assumption, working with the chair on day-to-day operations, is that's something that can be worked on.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other citizen or board comments? 6:30. We are adjourned.